Welcome back, everyone. Today we're at Upper Badlands here in Westminster, Colorado, looking at one of MVP's newest go-to drivers for most pros, including Simon and maybe Eagle, the Dimension, and why it's probably not for people like you and I. So taking a look at the Dimension, a lot of MVP's latest runs, everyone knows, have come out board flat. And you can really tell with this Dimension here. It's a 14.5 speed, 5 glide, 0 turn, 3 fade, and realistically, those are pretty much true to number. Even though it's 14.5 speed, the rim doesn't feel too incredibly uncomfortable. It's kind of nukish. For someone who has decently sized hands, it actually fits very comfortably and almost encourages a nose down throw because it just fills my hand pretty well, but I like to think I have bigger hands. And for comparison, I brought the new Skystone, which I've yet to throw, the new Discmania PD2, as well as the old Hooligan Discs Yeet. This is the Lone Star ran one, being sponsored by Hooligan for this year on their AM squad. I feel like this is still going to be a little too neutral in comparison to the Dimension, but I think it's going to give a great idea of how actually overstable this Dimension really is. That thing is crazy. D2. Okay. Some decent first rips. Okay, just for a frame of reference, the Dimension landed short of this blue pin. I believe it's about 400 feet, but very downhill from the tee pad up there. We're about maybe edge of circle, maybe about 28 feet. And also the Yeet went about 40 deep. It got out left more, hit that kind of dry patch of grass over there and got a good skip. And the PD2 landed about as far as the Dimension, but is about 60 feet right. I kind of got an early release with it and did not quite get it wide enough. But the biggest difference between the Dimension and the other two discs is that the Dimension hit flat, just immediately tried to get to the ground and get a big skip. The PD2s seem to stay in the air and get a little bit more forward push before that nice reliable fade. And then the Yeet, I definitely hit the best, but still kind of proves that it's still overstable, don't get me wrong, but it had a lot of forward push and a lot of kind of lateral movement to it before it ended up eventually fading back towards the basket. So it really just kind of shows how overstable this Dimension really is, and why even someone like me who was hopeful for a usable overstable driver, especially after seeing Simon throw it, it's still not quite usable for me. So well, yeah, putting's still a work in progress, but it is what it is.
Putting's still a work in progress, but it is what it is.
Alright, coming to hole 2 here at Upper Badlands. Kind of a terrible hole to film. The basket's way out there. It's kind of a lefty forehand shot. Sorry ahead of times, but all of the reviews on my channel are going to be left-handed. The disc overall feels phenomenal for forehands. It's nice and flat. You can get a nice little pinch on it with your thumb and your finger. But the biggest issue is that rim. I mean, as someone who likes bigger rim drivers, I still think it's too wide for a typical forehand grip. With how your fingers kind of have to spread to get a good grip on the rim, it almost feels like you can't grip it any harder to get a firmer release. It just kind of feels like you have to have a moderate grip to it in order to get a proper release. I've yet to forehand this disc, but knowing how overstable it is on backhand, this is still one of those discs to me where Simon makes it look like it flies great, and he throws so much harder than I do, and most of us do. But this is the kind of disc that almost ruins your form because it's so overstable and requires you to throw on so much chop angle or massive anhyzer angles to get normal flights that it's kind of hurting your form more than helping it. Where if you were typically developing your form, getting faster arm speed and stuff like that, then this disc might have a potential of making your bag because now you have the arm speed to complement the stability. So I don't know, definitely not a disc for me. I'm gonna keep tossing around, get some final thoughts on it, but still feels good. I just think this is a disc MVP has that is plagued by the flatness. If it had like a mild shoulder to a dome, or even just a mild shoulder to a flat top, I think the numbers would fly a little bit more true, because it's just so ridiculously overstable that you don't see the glide. So. That's kind of my point exactly. I literally chopped it over on a forced over anhyzer angle right at the top of this hill, and it got maybe 125 feet before it was already flat and working back to the basket. So to an extent, for utility overstable, fantastic. But to the other extent, there's thinner rim drivers that can give you the same effect with a better hand feel, just because that rim is so damn wide. So I don't know. It is weirdly marshy with how nice the weather has been this week. Oh. Nice cleanups. Okay, so kind of like I was suspecting, I didn't know the distance of the last hole. You just put it at 347, and which means that dimension on a low flex line carried about 300 feet in the forehand, which isn't terrible given its overstability. I will say the yeet will probably stay in the bag. Not going to compare it anymore because it's still like a good overstable destroyer. It's not like 21 Kelvin beef or an overstable like the Eero Markkinen destroyers. So I think we're gonna just stick with the PD2 and the Dimension. I have a 21 Kelvin in the bag. I just don't think it's necessary to compare the two because the PD2 and the Dimension are very similar in that aspect. Hole 3 here, 345, uphill again, probably place closer to like the 380. 400 mark, and we're just going to see if we can do some nice anhyzer flex lines so I can show you guys the stability, especially uphill, and see how little the Dimension likes to glide up my arms. Wow, okay. I believe I stood right in the shot, but you know, I don't know what I'm doing. That PD2 just likes to go. The dome is so nice. It felt like a decent anhyzer, and it just glides. I kind of like it. So both these shots ended up being pretty good. Dimension's about 10 feet short of the basket, which honestly was not expecting given the stability, but we'll take it. PD2 is pin high right about 25 feet. Biggest difference being PD2 did get in the air more, so it gave it more height, but it still aired it to about 3 feet short and spiked, where the Dimension, even though I threw it low, just over the hillside, it hit the ground probably 45 feet short because it got to skip up to where it's at. So it's just like, again, I love MVP. I think their mid-ranges are great. Putters are great. I'm putting with pictures right now. Just gonna play around with them. But the drivers, man, I mean, the time-lapse flies so good with the dome it has. And if they could just make runs with some dome to it, I think a lot of their distance drivers would be a lot more approachable, especially with a lot of people kind of looking for that nuke destroyer clone pre-time-lapse era. With the flatness just adds such a level of stability to this driver that I really do not think it would have with some dome. I've thrown nukes, I've thrown bosses, I've thrown other overstable high-speed drivers that just aren't nearly as overstable as this one is. I mean, this Dimension is kind of rivaling the MVP Energy, which was quite literally, like Eagle said, a distance driver tilt. So, who knows? Putting is already better than the first video, so that's a win. 540 feet down the hill, all the way down there. You kind of know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna try to crank it over on an anhyzer that matches the hillside and see how far I can push it, because I'm not getting there, and even with the faster disc, I don't think I'm getting there anyways. So let's just see how these two compare. Not even close. I could probably just end the video here after that throw, Jesus. All these overstable shots, I'm gonna throw my arm out. Joy. All right, so coming up to the Dimension right here, looks like it's not even in frame, but we are maybe 300 feet from the tee. A couple of variables came in that I didn't really account for. There was a left to right wind, which never helps with overstable discs. And I think it came up a little bit nose up, but that just kind of continues my point. The disc is great. If you're looking for utility overstability and you have like that 400 to maybe 500 foot level of power, I can see the feasibility of bagging this disc. Not saying it's a bad disc by any means. Pretty much started off the video by saying how wide this rim is. Feels very comfortable to me, especially. It feels like I can just put my fingers into it. I don't have to worry about fan gripping it because it's too small. I don't have to worry about the power grip just feeling uncomfortable. I just feel like I can put it in my hand and get a nice firm grip, and I don't feel like I have to grip the hell out of it just to get a nice release out of it. So I think it does have a place and probably a fair amount of people's bags, especially given the flat profile for any maybe large-handed friends that want a flat forehand disc. Maybe before this video, probably not. Maybe I'll sneak in a couple clips on social media or something like that of my buddy who throws really hard forehands throwing this disc. Unfortunately, he just hurt himself, so probably not today. Even just looking down the fairway a bit, I've got 2 or 3 discs that are easily 150 or 250 feet down there. I'm not really sure if you can see them or not. Yeah, they're a ways down there. Overall, great Frisbee. I would say as a go-to distance driver for most intermediate to advanced players, probably like a 7.5 out of 10. I think some dome would severely help this disc to make it a little bit more like that 21 Heimberg Nuke OS level of stability and have some decent glide to it. I think a 5 glide is a bit of a push for the am arm. Obviously Simon throws these like 500 feet. As a distance driver, flat out, it feels great. I think a 7.5 is probably the best that I can give it. If you're interested in picking up a Dimension, I believe Infinite Discs is currently out of them, but you can go to infinitedisc.com, set up notifications to be alerted when they come back in stock to try one for yourself. Maybe a lighter weight one might do people somewhere good, but this 172 white one that I have is absolutely a meat hook and probably go back on the shelf. So thanks for watching the review of the Dimension. Let me know what you guys think below. I got a couple more distance drivers I'm gonna test out here. One of them was another MVP driver that was pretty popular with another pro. And I will see you guys later on this nice tilted angle that I'm just now realizing I'm on. So